All right, A Hitchhiker's Guide to Urantia, What a Wonderful World, or How Urantia is Unique and Why It Matters. This is our workshop. Katie Roche, Paula Thompson, our Planetary Caretakers, Sovereigns and Seraphim. We're more than a dispensation behind, and I think this is really important to remember. And a lot of this, I should preface this by saying a lot of this is going to be a little bit of a recap of everything you guys have already heard since we began on Thursday night. So, but it bears repeating. On average worlds, there are 7 epochs of human life determined by the sequential planetary missions of the divine sun's planetary mortal epochs. 1, pre-planetary prince man, an era of primitive man. Mind of will dignity appears. Evolutionary races of color come sequentially. Fire and tools are discovered, and primitive religions of fear and ignorance. 2, post-planetary prince man. Family, agriculture, biologic improvement, tribal organization, then national life, and spiritual dawn. 3, post-Adamic man. Internationalism, upstepped intellectual capacity, acceleration of spiritual progress, great invention, energy control, mechanical development, multiform manufacture, control of natural forces, exploration, material progress, and the development of the physical sciences. 4, post-magisterial sun man, economic liberation, flowering of art, music, and higher learning. 5, post-bestowal sun man, spiritual uplift of mortal races, bestowal of the spirit of truth. 6, post-teacher sun man, education, economic and administrative systems radically reformed, frequent translation by fusion rather than natural death. And 7, the era of light and life. It is the mortals of such an age who are destined as a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, an exalted people. And you shall show forth the praises of him who has called you out of darkness into this marvelous light. And that's a summary of the paper 52, the planetary mortal epochs. So is it just me, or does it seem like Urantia is stuck in number 3? Katie and I decided that we would highlight those in a different color, those 3, because it seems to us that we got stuck in the post-Adamic man. And Melchizedek's mission was merely, not to make light of it, but simply an emergency mission designed to restore the light of truth that had almost gone extinguished on the planet, and to prepare the way for Michael's bestowal sun mission. So we didn't have a magisterial mission. And when they say we're more than a dispensation behind, I think this is what they're getting at. Katie, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, it just seems that we have come across all these 3 eras at once. It's where do we put attention? Where do we catch up? How do we manage this? It's overwhelming in certain ways. It's liberating in other ways. It's hopeful in many ways. But here we see this extraordinary, almost, it's so out of step, and yet it's so needed. And we don't know anything different in our lifetime. We know it this way. So we're taking it in stride. So looking at it and seeing how out of step we are, and we're sort of clogged right in the middle there. I don't know if other worlds deal with this. So, thinking about, well, how do we deal with it? We don't do the greatest job either, but the differences in some areas of the world where we're literally still trying to find clean drinking water for people, to blasting off into space in privately funded spacecraft. The differences are so striking, and here we are somehow in the middle of it, making sense and trying to determine, well, what is important?
And it seems to me that we wouldn't even be stuck in post-Adamic man if Michael hadn't made his bestowal on Urantia. We'd still be post-planetary prince man, probably. Just my thoughts on that. Urantia is a full dispensation behind, and that's, again, to reiterate that, to keep perspective, more than a dispensation behind, actually. Our story is punctuated by rebellion and default, and blessed by unique celestial bestowals. They are: the planetary prince's arrival happened on Urantia after the appearance of Mind of Will Dignity, the first human family, and simultaneously with the 6 evolutionary races of color. The prince arrived with his corporeal staff to teach the rudimentary foundations of civilization, but it fell into chaos because of planetary rebellion. To the Edenic teachings of Adam and Eve were meant to effect a marvelous transformation in humanity, but this beautiful and essential revelation ended in default. 3, Melchizedek of Salem arrived for an emergency bestowal mission to maintain the light of truth on Urantia and make ready the world for the promised bestowal of the Creator Son. 4, Jesus of Nazareth bestowal by our local universe creator Son, who, quote, would rescue the planetary titles from forfeiture and uncertainty and, quote, make a beginning of setting these things in order. And 5, our beloved Urantia papers are an unprecedented revelation of truth in written form, differing from all previous revelations, quote, for they are not the work of a single universe personality, but a composite presentation by many beings. But no revelation short of the attainment of the universal Father can ever be complete. So go ahead, Katie.
So here we have the planet in total disarray, rebellion, default, and there needed to be some form of planetary government. And there had to be some efforts made to mitigate the catastrophe and to preserve the human advances. We know that that matters to the celestial beings, to the people, the beings who came and took charge of the planet. So first there were the Melchizedek receivers and Makaventa Melchizedek himself. Jesus, of course, came as the bestowal son and as planetary prince. We had the 4 and 20 councillors to help in this government that evolved on this planet. And from there came the resident governor general, aided by the Master Seraphim, the planetary supervision, and of course, the United Midwayers. And unique unto our world, the divisional headquarters of Archangels. And the quote that relates to this so beautifully is, Urantia is not without proper and effective supervision from the system, constellation, and universe rulers. But the planetary government is unlike that of any other world in the Satania system, even in all Nebadon.
You want the next slide?
Yes, please.
So Melchizedek held down the fort, and the receivers have. They've held it for all these many millennia. The Melchizedek receivers and the emergency bestowal of Makaventa Melchizedek. And this is an interesting little placard from the sun signs. A little prayer to Melchizedek. Ascended Master Melchizedek, help us to gain courage, confidence, willpower, and strength to overcome the challenges in our lives. It's interesting to me that the Melchizedeks are getting more and more attention, especially in the New Age, and that this little prayer comes out because they literally do help us with this kind of thing. From paper 67, the 12 Melchizedek receivers of Urantia did heroic work. They preserved the remnants of civilization, and their planetary policies were faithfully executed by Van. Within 1,000 years after the rebellion, he had more than 350 advanced groups scattered abroad in the world. These outposts of civilization consisted largely of the descendants of the loyal Andonites, slightly mixed with the Sangic races, particularly the Blue Man, and with the Nodites. We just can't emphasize enough how the Melchizedeks have saved us and preserved, as this quote says, preserved the remnants of civilization so that when Michael did come here, he really had a chance of making a huge difference for us.
So Melchizedek, very special Melchizedek. And what makes him so special? It was because he lived on Urantia during the time of Abraham, and he was locally known there as the Prince of Salem, presided over a small colony of truth seekers residing at Salem. He volunteered to incarnate as a mortal in the likeness of mortal flesh, and did so with the approval of the Melchizedek receivers, his fellows of the planet, who feared that the light of truth would become extinguished during that period of increasing spiritual darkness. And he did foster the truth of his day and safely pass it on to Abraham and his associates. So you're thinking, how did the discussions happen to have it be that he volunteered to do this? What was going on? That he knew Michael was coming. He knew that there was great need to keep spiritual truth and thought alive. And so when he came, he taught that there was only one God, and that the favor of God depended on faith rather than sacrifices. He was dealing with very primitive people. And so he substituted the sacrament of bread and wine over the sacrifice of flesh and blood, literally bringing a new idea of how to approach God. He bid his followers to obey 7 commandments and to spread the word of his teachings to all the world, which they successfully did. He taught the idea of receiving divine favor through faith alone. What an incredible thing to be teaching primitive people, that they would be able to grasp that. On paper 114, some believe that Melchizedek will not come to take personal direction of Urantian affairs until the end of the current dispensation. Others hold that the vicegerent prince may not come as such until Michael sometime returns to Urantia, as he promised when still in the flesh. Still others, including this narrator, look for Melchizedek's appearance any day or hour. Next slide, please.
Katie, I want to ask you, what do you think? I mean, this strikes me, his appearance. They look for his appearance. Are they hinting, do you think, that he will actually appear as he did as El Elyon, when he appeared in the tent, in the shepherd's tent?
There's always next summer study session.
Okay. Yeah, we'll save it for there.
So as the vicegerent planetary prince of Urantia, Melchizedek had given us a lot of clues and glimpses beyond what he did at that time. In the time of Abraham, He was very patient, powerful. He came with the authority of a son of God. He laid the foundations for the further spiritual uplift and rehabilitation of our world. But because his was an emergency bestowal, we can't tell from the records what his future might be. And the revelator conjectured that it might also be possible that Makaventa would again appear in person on Urantia and in some modified manner resume the role of the dethroned planetary prince, or else appear on Earth to function as the vicegerent representing Christ Michael, who of course now actually holds the title of planetary prince of Urantia. But the revelator goes on to say, while it is far from clear to us as to what Makaventa's destiny may be, nevertheless, events which have so recently taken place strongly suggest that the foregoing conjectures are probably not far from the truth. And here again, the questions come right to mind is what has so recently taken place, given the time span of when this material was given. So what could that be? Makes you wonder. I mean, was it World War I? Was it advances in science? We don't know. We do get to conjecture a lot along with them. Next slide.
So there's a new sheriff in town. Take a moment to take this graphic in. Derek Samaras created this graphic. We were talking about Jesus one day, and I pointed out to him that Jesus said that he had come to make a beginning of setting things in order. So Derek came up with this slide. We always love to think about Jesus being strong, capable, tough, compassionate, all those wonderful things. So there's the boss. So the seventh and final bestowal, Jesus's bestowal accomplished so much for us. And I would like to throw out there that I think that he was able to accomplish so much for us because of the work of Melchizedek. Melchizedek tilled the soil and got it ready. And so it was interesting how it came in a 1-2 punch. 2,000 years later, Jesus came and he did so much. And here's what he did. In part, he revealed the true and loving nature of God the Father to us and to the entire universe. He divested religion of the superstitions of magic, the illusions of mythology, and the bondage of traditional dogmatism. Personal favorite, he elevated the status of women to equality with men. His resurrection forever proves that there is life after death. He poured out his spirit of truth upon all flesh, facilitating the universal bestowal of thought adjusters. His life is the everlasting comfort of all disappointed idealists. He established the Council of 4 and 20, and as a result, the resident governors general. He sent 12 corps of super angels to serve on Urantia. He did all of this upon resurrection and ascension. Paper 99 says, the religion of Jesus is the most dynamic influence ever to activate the human race. Jesus shattered tradition, destroyed dogma, and called mankind to the achievement of its highest ideals in time and eternity, to be perfect, even as the Father in heaven is perfect. And this speaks to his ongoing personal ministry to us all. through his spirit of truth. He was the perfectly unified human personality. And today, as in Galilee, he continues to unify mortal experience and to coordinate human endeavors. He unifies life, ennobles character, and simplifies experience. He enters the human mind to elevate, transform, and transfigure it. It is literally true. If any man has Christ Jesus within him, he is a new creature. The old things are passing away. Behold, all things are becoming new. When I ponder all of the amazing things that his beautiful life did for us as human beings, it's almost unfathomable to me. It makes my heart swell. And I can't even imagine where we'd be if he hadn't come. Don't even want to think about it. But especially the universal outpouring of thought adjusters. Imagine that. And the spirit of truth, which leads us into all truth. These things we know personally and can experience personally. Because of the Urantia book, we're beginning to understand the ministry of the angels that are here. But what Jesus did has gotten us through 2,000 pretty amazing years. And here we are.
Another wonderful aspect of our planetary government that's been revealed to us are the 4 and 20 councillors. So they're also known as the Board of Planetary Supervisors. They also have all so far been, we have them recruited from the 8 Urantia races. They hail from Jerusalem. They're former Urantians. They have authority to represent Michael in the government of our world, and very, very interestingly, in all other quarantine planets in the system, which is pretty astonishing to consider why that might have been put in place. It was put in place, but why, what the thinking was to have Urantians represent Michael in the government of other quarantine planets in the system. It's a pretty extraordinary thought. Their seats surround the judgment throne of the presiding Archangel, the one that calls the resurrection roll call of mercy and justice for all Satania. And John the Revelator called them the 4 and 20 elders because he saw them in his vision that was given to him. And these 24 counselors have authority to represent Christ Michael in all matters concerning the roll calls of Satania and in many other phases of the scheme of mortal ascension on the isolated worlds of the system. There's a lot going on there. It has to do with how we progress once we leave this world. Next slide, please. So the first 16 members of this advisory council were assigned by Michael. And those are represented, the seats there are taken by the great teachers and worship leaders from the evolutionary races. We have Onagar, Monsant, Onamanalant, and I swear I did pronounce that right before I practiced, Orlandoff, Singlangton, Porshunta, Bantad, and Orvanon. These great teachers that we can only dream about what little bits we know about them, but what they did on our world was so wonderful that they were given a seat at this extraordinary council. Our material son, Adam, and daughter Eve are there to our great delight. The prophets, Enoch and Elijah, translated, fused with their thought adjuster and are there. The matchless Moses is on that council. So is John the Baptist. Here, the one who saw this, perhaps as he was given this vision of his own future. Archangel Melchizedek, who has eternally assumed the assignment of service as a mortal ascender. And that gave him such a right to sit at that table. 1, 2, 3, the first, leader of the loyal Midway creatures. The remaining seats are not permanently occupied, but they are held in reserve for later assignment to ascending mortals and future great teachers. And I've thought about who that might be. My personal favorite is Mother Teresa or even Mahatma Gandhi. I think that those are two extraordinary people that might, even fleetingly be on such a council. And from paper 45, we hear the selected personalities are exempt from the ascension regime for the time being on Gabriel's request. And we have no idea how long they may serve in this capacity.
Isn't that amazing to think about that? What I like to imagine is that they've been given a do-over. They've been given another chance to get back down here and as a resident governor general, but we'll cover that coming up.
The 4 and 20 councillors are the designated agents for executing the special request of Gabriel and the unusual mandates of Michael. And the word that we're given to tantalize our thoughts, here's one, the unusual mandates of Michael. The 24 councillors come the nearest to being the legislative branch of the planetary government, which is also quite extraordinary. They also act as advisory supervisors of the 36 other rebellion isolated worlds of the system. They make frequent trips as individuals to each of the quarantine planets, especially to our world, and they report back to Landforge, our system supervisor. Similar other planetary commissions are subordinate to these Urantian 4 and 20 councillors. So there are other planetary commissions, but do they all meet from time to time to talk about the difficulties that the isolated worlds have? They share in common ideas that may be, well, it worked here, it worked there, maybe we can try it on your planet. I mean, there's the ideas, the thoughts that must be exchanged at such gatherings. Really thought-provoking. The 24 will likely serve in their present capacities until some change in planetary status ensues, such as the end of a dispensation, the assumption of full authority by Archangel Melchizedek, the final adjudication of the Lucifer rebellion, or the reappearance of Michael on the world of his final bestowal. In other words, they're going to be around probably for a while yet.
So now we come to the resident governors general, and this is a feature of the 4 and 20 councillors. Notwithstanding that Archangel Melchizedek was proclaimed vice-gerent planetary prince of Urantia, our world is still supervised by successive resident governors general, members of the 4 and 20 councillors. Every 100 years, one of this council serves on Urantia as resident governor general. He or she acts as the coordinator of superhuman administration and is the respected head and universally recognized leader of the celestial beings functioning on Urantia. All orders of angelic hosts regard him, her, as their coordinating director. The United Midwayers, since the departure of 1, 2, and 3, the first, to become one of the 24 councillors, really look upon the successive governors general as their planetary fathers. The direct administrative cabinet of the governor general consists of the acting chiefs of the 12 Master Seraphim, who function as the immediate superhuman directors of planetary progress and stability. So, the current resident governor general, who might it be? Here's what we've been told. We know every 100 years, the 24 planetary supervisors designate one of their number to sojourn on Urantia and act as their executive representative, as resident governor general. The current executive officer came here in the early 1930s and is the 20th so to serve. The name of the current planetary supervisor was withheld because humans are prone to venerate, even to deify, our extraordinary compatriots and superhuman superiors. And I say, well, that's just great. Fine. Don't tell us who it is. Maybe we can figure it out. Based on what's happened since 1930, who do you think the RGG is? If you were the RGG, what world issues would you be focused on? I read this section one day about the current general, and I thought, Governor General, and I thought, so you're not going to tell us who it is. That's fine. Let me see if I can vibe it. And I just started thinking about things that have happened in the last 100 years that might be a clue to who it is. And my mind flooded with ideas about the rights of women. And so it might have been Eve. And I thought about the return of natural medicine and herbal medicines and midwifery and all of those wonderful gifts that women bring, and the equality of women, all the progress that has been made. And I also thought of the visions of Mary, supposed visions of Mary and Medjugorje and Fatima. So I think it might be Eve, but she might have been the last one too. And she may be the next one. I think it's important to think, if you had your chance, if you were on that esteemed body, what would you do if you could come back? What problems would you work on? Is this one mine, Katie?
Nope, that one's mine.
Okay.
Another branch, if you will, of the government, this unusual planetary government we have here, the Master Seraphim. And this is pretty fascinating material to once again go over. The absence of the corporeal staff of the planetary prince and the material regime of the Adamic son and daughter, which is pretty profound, is partially compensated by the special ministry of seraphim and by the unusual services of the midway creatures. We'll talk about the midway creatures shortly, but these 12 groups of angels function under the general supervision of the resident governor general and make up his cabinet, but they're immediately directed by the Seraphic Council of 12, who are the acting chiefs of each group. They don't exercise direct or arbitrary control over the domains of their assignment, but we're told that they can and do so manipulate planetary conditions and so associate circumstances as favorably to influence the spheres of human activity to which they are attached. That is, wow. To be able to manipulate planetary situations so that things that we hope to go right will. The Master Seraphim of planetary supervision utilize many agencies, we're told, for the prosecution of their missions. So they function as ideational clearinghouses, mind focalizers, and project promoters. while unable to inject new and higher conceptions into human minds, they can and do often act to intensify some higher ideal which has already appeared within a human intellect. But aside from these many means of positive action, the Master Seraphim ensure planetary progress against vital jeopardy. This is their big job, through the mobilization, training, and maintenance of the reserve core of destiny. And a quote from the book, "The chief function of these reservists is to ensure against breakdown of evolutionary progress. They are the provisions which the celestial forces have made against surprise. They are the guarantees against disaster." So the first four that we'll talk about, the Master Seraphim, are the epical angels, the angels of the current dispensational age. We see that they are entrusted with the oversight and direction of the affairs of each generation as they are designed to fit into the mosaic of the age in which they occur. There we have the progress angels, entrusted with the task of initiating the evolutionary progress of the successive social ages. And we're told that they foster the development of the inherent progressive trend of evolutionary creatures. And most of all, they labor incessantly to make things what they ought to be. The religious guardian angels, the angels of the churches, are those who endeavor to maintain the imperishable values of the old ideals and the morals from one epoch to another. And we've learned that these religious guardians are also known as the checkmates of the angels of progress. And then we can consider the angels of nation life, also known as the angels of the trumpets. They're the directors of the political performances of Urantia national life and the international relations. They are probably incredibly busy in this day and age. It is particularly through the ministry of this seraphic division that the Most High's rule in the kingdoms of men.
So we continue with these super angels. We have the fifth core, the angels of the races. They work for the conservation of the evolutionary races of time, regardless of their political or religious groupings. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. On Urantia, there are remnants of 9 human races which have commingled and combined into the peoples of modern times. The sixth core, the angels of the future, the projection angels who forecast a future age and plan for the realization of better things, of a new and advancing dispensation. They are the architects of the successive eras. 7, the Angels of Enlightenment, dedicated to the fostering of planetary education, occupied with mental and moral training as it concerns individuals, families, groups, schools, communities, nations, and whole races. The Angels of Health, assigned to the assistance of those mortal agencies dedicated to the promotion of health and the prevention of disease. And contemplating these cores is a blueprint for us, I think. They're telling us what they're focused on. And it's pretty clear these are the things that we should focus on as well. So in addition, we have 9, the Home Seraphim. They're dedicated to the preservation and advancement of the home, the basic institution of human civilization. 10, the Angels of Industry, concerned with fostering industrial development and improving economic conditions among Urantians. 11, the angels of diversion. They foster the values of play, humor, and rest, seeking to uplift man's recreational diversions and thus to promote the more profitable utilization of human leisure. And 12, the angels of superhuman ministry. They're the angels to the angels of the angels, assigned to the ministry of all other superhuman life on the planet, temporary or permanent. Many celestial orders have been assisting our journey along the unique path that Urantia is on. Is there any one celestial order that you are most appreciative of and would like to work with? I think that's a great question for us to focus on, because we know that they are assigned humans and humans do work with them, and humans certainly are the unsung heroes in this whole story and the very critical aspect of their success. They simply cannot succeed if we aren't willing to take up their work with them. So I like to think about what I might be able to do to help them in their job.
The Midwayers are also known as the unsung heroes of Urantia. And reading these papers over again, it's amazing to me how much I didn't remember, but they were the permanent citizens. They are the permanent citizens of Urantia. We know that they came in two distinct orders. The primary or senior corps, they came into being back in the days of Dalmatia, the superhuman, non-sexual liaison of male and female members of the corporeal staff, and eventually 50,000 came into being. At that time, the creatures were these beings were the intelligence core of the prince's administration. They ranged far and wide. They studied, they observed the world races, they rendered many types of invaluable services to the prince and his staff, as that work was influencing human society, and it was remote from the planetary headquarters. So they were able to report back, to observe, report back, do the work of the realm at that time. This regime continued until the tragic days of the planetary rebellion. And the numbers here which are so staggering. And the rebellion ensnared a little over 4/5, over 40,000 of the primary Midwayers. Incomprehensible. The loyal corps entered the service of the Melchizedek receivers, functioning under the titular leadership of Van until the days of Adam. That was the primary or the senior corps. The secondary or younger corps actually arose from the Adamson union with Rada, who was a direct descendant of the planetary prince's senior staff. We remember the beautiful story of the invisible children. Well, this original secondary corps numbered 1,984. 33 of these secondary Midwayers, the troops of their organization, when Adamson died, they joined the service of the planetary receivers. But the unattached remainder led an irregular and unorganized existence, capable of much up to the days of Christ Michael. The loyal majority of 1,111 then enlisted under the leadership of the primary Midwayers. And to think about it, what if they were so irregular and unorganized, and at one point, and now, what wonderful shift, what incredible thing happened within that corps to bring them all to be such unsung heroes of Urantia, to join with the primary corps. What occurred there? And in Jesus' bestowal, remember, he said that we were not the only sheep of his flock. There were others. And the beautiful Urantia book that was delivered by the Midwayers, that just you realize that some extraordinary thing had to have happened to bring them all together from this unorganized and irregular existence to come and to so wholeheartedly get behind us and the ascension plans and to help this world and to be the permanent citizens, to take their role, to claim that and say, this is who we are.
Mm.
I think this one's mine, right, Paula? This one's
I think so. Yeah.
we lose track. The United Midwayers of Urantia now function as a single united core of 10,992 since shortly after Pentecost. The Spirit of Truth, maybe that was an influencing factor too upon the Midwayers.
Good point.
We can think. We're given brains, we can think.
Mm-hmm.
At present, governed alternately by the senior member of each order to assist in the spiritual and semi-spiritual work on the planet. Some of the words they put there, it's like, what's semi-spiritual? What's that? The second Midwayers are in nature nearer man than angel, and therefore they are in a way of our races and very understanding and sympathetic in their contact with human beings. And we're told that they are invaluable to the Seraphim in their work for and with the various races of mankind. But both orders are indispensable to the Seraphim, who serve as personal guardians to the mortals, to our own guardian angels. Interesting to think how that would work.
They make a living bridge, don't they?
Yeah.
They make a living bridge between us and the angels. So the United Midwayers of Urantia have a motto. And their motto is, what the United Midwayers undertake, the United Midwayers do. And I was talking to a friend about this one day. And I said, well, I wonder if we humans should have a motto too. And he immediately said, oh, I have one. The United Humans of Urantia. What we start out to do, we do. I love that one. What we set out to do, we do. That they are organized for service with the Planetary Seraphim in accordance with innate endowments and acquired skills in the following groups. 1, Midway Messengers, a small corps of great assistance in the service of quick and reliable personal communication. 2, Planetary Sentinels, perform the important duties of observers for all the numerous phenomena and types of communication which are of import to the supernatural beings of the realm. 3, contact personalities. In the contacts made with the mortal beings of the material worlds, i.e. for the UB, the Midway creatures are an essential factor in such liaisons of the spiritual and material levels. 4, the progress helpers. These are the more spiritual of the Midway creatures, and they are distributed as assistants to the various orders of seraphim who function in special groups on the planet. You start to get an idea of how indispensable they are for the success of everything that our planetary supervisors are trying to get done down here. So we have the primary Midwayers, and they're considerably near the angelic types of being and are therefore usually assigned to working with and ministering to the spiritual forces resident on the planet. They act as companions and guides for celestial visitors and student sojourners. And the secondary Midwayers are almost exclusively attached to the ministry of the material beings of the realm. That's 8 billion of us. And there's 1,111 of them. They exist just outside the range of mortal vision and possess sufficient latitude of adaptation to make at will physical contact with what humans call material things. These unique creatures have certain definite powers over the things of time and space, not accepting the beasts of the realm. Their chief work today is that of unperceived personal liaison associates of those men and women who constitute the Planetary Reserve Corps of Destiny. And their coordination of personalities and circumstances on our world eventually led to the Urantia book's existence as an epical revelation. You just can't emphasize enough how invaluable their work is and how busy they are. I pray for them a lot, and I tell them a lot that I am so grateful for their work.
And that brings us to the last area of planetary government here, the divisional headquarters of Archangels, something incredibly unique. It's among the many things difficult to understand concerning the future government of Urantia. A prominent one is the location on the planet of a circuit and divisional headquarters of the Archangels. The Archangel Corps of Nebadon is directed by the firstborn of this order, and in more recent times, a divisional headquarters of the Archangels has been maintained on Urantia. It is this unusual fact that soon arrests the attention of extra Nebadon student visitors. In paper 114, we learn that in times of grave planetary crisis, the Most High Regent exercises unquestioned authority over all ministers and administrators resident on the planet, excepting only the divisional organization of the Archangels. Their marching orders come from a higher place. In general, the Archangels are assigned to the service and ministry of the Avenal Order of Sonship, but not until they have passed through extensive preliminary training in all phases of the work of the various ministering spirits. A corps of 100 accompanies every paradise bestowal son to an inhabited world, being temporarily assigned to him for the duration of such a bestowal. If the magisterial son should become temporary ruler of the planet, these archangels would act as the directing heads of all celestial life on that sphere.
I have to wonder, Katie, if maybe they're here because they came with Michael and they just stayed on. So we have to grasp the significance. Archangels are the offspring of the Creator Son and the Universe Mother Spirit. They are the highest type of high spirit being produced in large numbers in a local universe. Archangels are one of the few groups of local universe personalities who are not normally under the jurisdiction of Gabriel. They are not in any manner concerned with the routine administration of the universe, being dedicated to the work of creature survival and to the furtherance of the ascending career of mortals, the mortals of time and space. Do you grasp the significance of the fact that your lowly and confused planet has become a divisional headquarters for the universe administration and direction of certain archangel activities having to do with the Paradise Ascension scheme? This undoubtedly presages the future concentration of other ascendant activities on the bestowal world of Michael and lends a tremendous and solemn import to the Master's personal promise, I will come again. Their circuit, all Jerusalem broadcasts to the individual worlds are relayed from the system capitals, except the Michael messages, which sometimes go direct to their destinations over the Archangel's circuit. The absence of the planetary prince is effectively compensated by the triune presence of the archangels, the Most High Observer, and the Governor General. This rather loosely organized and somewhat personally administered planetary government is more than expectedly effective because of the time-saving assistance of the archangels and their ever-ready circuit, which is so frequently utilized in planetary emergencies and administrative difficulties. Technically, the planet is still spiritually isolated in the Norlatia circuits, but in an emergency, this handicap can now be circumvented through utilization of the Archangel's circuit. On Urantia, much of the work of the expert interplanetary and inter-universe communication specialists must be accomplished over the Archangel's circuit. In recent years, the Archangel circuit has functioned on Urantia, but that means of communication is largely limited to the transactions of the Archangel core itself. You can begin to see how vitally important their circuit is for our world, because we're so handicapped. And if there is an emergency, they'll get the word out right away. Pronto.
So as we come toward the conclusion of this presentation, it's natural that we're going to be thinking about the rewards of isolation. And we're going to spend some time in the breakout with this, but let's throw a couple of ideas and questions your way. Paper 76, we hear that misfortune has not, however, been the sole lot of Urantia. This planet has also been the most fortunate in the local universe of Nebadon. Urantians should count it all gain if the blunders of their ancestors and the mistakes of their early world rulers so plunged the planet into such a hopeless state of confusion, all the more confounded by evil and sin, that this very background of darkness should so appeal to Michael of Nebadon that he selected this world as the arena wherein to reveal the loving personality of the Father in heaven. It is not that Urantia needed a creator son to set its tangled affairs in order. It is rather that the evil and sin on Urantia afforded the creator son a more striking background against which to reveal the matchless love, mercy, and patience of the Paradise Father.
So here's the slingshot effect that occurred to Katie and I. All that has gone on since Melchizedek's sojourn and what he created for the amazing planetary bestowal of Michael created a slingshot effect. And the idea of a slingshot is that when you're using a slingshot, the further one pulls back the projectile, and we've been pulled back really far, the farther it will go when it's released. So is Urantia experiencing a slingshot effect because of Michael's seventh bestowal? And if so, how far might we go? And we often talk, and I hear Urantia book readers talk a lot about, it's going to be, millennia. And they do tell us that they don't expect that we will settle down complacently for 1,000 years. But really, 1,000 years is not very long. In Michael's time, that's one day. We won't settle down complacently. There's a lot to be thought about in that statement right there. But we are in the process of settling down. It's happening now. So here's a quote from paper 166. And they who shall thus take the kingdom in spiritual power, and by the persistent assaults of living faith, will come from the north and the south, and from the east and the west. And behold, Many who are first will be last, and those who are last will many times be first. That's the slingshot effect. Here's another one. And some of these quotes we know you guys have already seen in presentations earlier on, but they bear repeating. From paper 76, Urantians should count it all gain if the blunders of their ancestors and the mistakes of their early world rulers so plunge the planet into such a hopeless state of confusion, all the more confounded by evil and sin, that in this very background of darkness should so appeal to Michael of Nebadon that he selected this world as the arena wherein to reveal the loving personality of the Father in heaven. And going back to that first slide where we talked about how we're stuck in the post-Adamic man age, Jesus is getting us unstuck from that. So I think we can expect some amazing things.
So it is clear that mankind on Urantia is on the march. If we look back at just the last 500 years, and especially the last 100 years, we see mechanical inventions and the dissemination of knowledge on modifying civilization. Certain economic adjustments and social changes are imperative if cultural disaster is to be avoided. This new and oncoming social order will not settle down complacently for a millennium. The human race must become reconciled to a procession of changes, adjustments, and readjustments. Mankind is on the march toward a new and unrevealed planetary destiny. Paula and I spent some time talking about how fast time is moving. It feels like we were talking about, Paula had a grandmother, right, Paula, that said she had traveled across the country in a covered wagon and she got to see Man on the Moon. Just the extreme, the extraordinary, just unfathomable that in the last 100 years, and some people who are still on Earth in their lifetime to see all of these changes so rapid, the Urantia book itself in that period of time. So can we doubt the help that is apparent from our celestial sovereigns, the Seraphim, the planetary helpers? And is our suddenly accelerated comeback part of being an experiential planet as well? All these extraordinary ideas. But is it worth the cost? I mean, not that we can judge, but is it worth the cost? We have places on this earth where there isn't even safe drinking water. And yet we have people, whose dogs drink out of gold dishes and things that, I mean, the extraordinary inequities in the world, the extremes, all kinds of afflictions and uneven areas of prosperity, health, and knowledge. And does our history provide lessons for other worlds? One thing that also that Paula and I talked about is in World War II, there were 6 million spiritual people extinguished in the Holocaust because one man was not in the line of fire. One man that makes us wonder, well, why didn't a planetary helper nudge him into the line of fire? And 6 million souls might have been, beautiful people, spiritual people might have been saved. And then we think about the Lucifer rebellion. Well, there were a lot of beautiful beings lost there too. And this is apparently part of what must happen. People must make their choices, and the outworkings of terrible, terrible decisions afflict us all. But what of the sublime hope for redemption and that the Father's will shall prevail? It's another question, So now we're going to be going into breakout, but we have 4 little formal questions plus these ideas we just threw to you. On the next slide are the questions to go into the breakout with.
Katie, I want to add too that
Okay, go ahead.
we had a really good discussion about the times that our planetary supervisors have intervened. And in the history of the planet, it hasn't been, as of the time of the writing, it had only been 30, 32, 33 times that they had intervened in the course of human evolution and destiny. And so Katie and I speculated about what those times possibly could have been if it wasn't, the Holocaust. And she mentioned the Holocaust, and I mentioned the fact that here multiple generations of deeply spiritual people who have taken a vow of celibacy and therefore haven't left any children on the planet. And how they tell us that they work to foster the spiritual types, and how discouraging it must be to them to see these deeply spiritual people not being willing to or inclined to leave progeny. From an angel point of view, that's got to be pretty hard to take, I think. So yeah, we had a great discussion about that, and I hope that you guys will have a great discussion about it in the breakout. And these are some of the questions that we brought out. And you can, think of some yourself if you want. And some of the other ones we talked about, the angels, which core would you want to work with if you could, that kind of thing. Can you think of some of the rewards of isolation that have occurred on a planetary level? Can you think of some personal rewards of isolation that have benefited your life? What is your highest hope for our world? What do you believe you can do to help our sovereign and seraphim and our many planetary helpers in achieving this task? Did you want to add anything, Katie, before we break out?
I am just so grateful that we had this beautiful time to work together on this and to have the liberty of thinking in such lofty ways and probably insolent ways. I mean, some of the things we think about must be a bit insolent to the beautiful planetary helpers we have. But to say thank you to the Education Committee for putting this forward and letting this happen. Thank you so much.
And it looks like we have plenty of time to have a nice breakout and then to have some discussion afterwards. So that's what we hope. So if you want to break us out, that would be great. How do you know when everybody's back, Tim?
Hi, Linda.
We're back.
Hi, Mike.
I'm here, Paula, so that's good enough.
So everybody's back. Okay.
We were forced back into the room, which means we're all here.
So did everybody have somebody designated from their group to share thoughts, or do you just want to go free form?
We're winging it. We're winging it.
We were room 6 was blessed with a volunteer even.
Oh, wow.
We had a volunteer, but we were exceptionally creatively talented in creating tangents. We have wonderful tangents.
I love it. You want to share any of those with us?
Well, I was the recorder for Group 1, so I guess I'll try to see if I have anything
Could we ask the
written down
recorder?
that I have short-term memory loss.
Could we ask the recorder for each group, and then you can, we'll see you all.
You dropped out for a second there, Ken. What Ken said is if the reporter could each raise their digital hand and you'll come on the top of everyone's screen.
Exactly. Thank you.
Or whoever has an interesting comment. We won't know if you're fudging it. You just say you're in a different group. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Michael, go ahead. Take it away.
Okay, I couldn't find my hand to raise, sorry. Anyway, it was Group 1. It was JJ, Bob, and other people I don't really know yet. But anyway, the rewards of isolation, the first thing we talked about had to do more with the worldwide effects, not the personal effects. But a key word that was brought up was context, that the Urantia book itself gives us hope and is a potential planetary effect of creating this context that we use when we try to understand things. And so that itself becomes a coalescing factor in not only just our thoughts, but as a planet. So, and they wanted to emphasize that it was the Urantia book itself is part of the rewards of isolation, because we probably have it because we're in such a bind, so we have that to thank, and that our exposure to the Urantia book in the second question had to do with our personal rewards that we may feel resulted from this quarantining, and some of the things that were discussed seem to fall in the category of discovery, that you and this was my thoughts about it that I hadn't shared yet, but I will, and that because we're in such a weird situation, you have this, it's like curiosity, but it's different. You actually find things and you discover them for yourselves, and it becomes this valuable piece of knowledge that if everything was great and we had Adam and Eve there explaining everything to us, it wouldn't be quite that way. So, we have a tougher time finding this understanding, this knowledge, but it's reward in itself. And then it's funny how the fifth epical revelation can actually cause you to relate to people and meet people, and it becomes something personal. It's as some of the attendees know, because they've been circulating with the Urantia book for years, I guess so. Anyway, but it is true. And I gave an example of meeting this guy who was a Sufi in one of my Middle Eastern religion classes, and we got talking about Midwayers and Janai from the Quran. And I don't remember how it happened. It was like we were at the board and we were discussing some historical point, and somehow that came up. Somehow. So, and I credit that to the fifth ethical revelation, and it's not the fact that we shared this knowledge. It was somehow this personal effect, and that's what happens. It becomes a binding spiritual force, and that's just a bunch of heavy book. If you carry around the book, or it's online, you can also gain from keeping you in shape.
Well done.
That's about it.
Thank you, Michael. Bobby, are you ready to go, or you're off in the nether region?
Yeah. I just got a message that my computer was about to conk out because I wasn't plugged in, so I just plugged it in.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we had an interesting discussion. There's opportunity for more compassion because we have more problems. So that was sort of interesting. We have handicapping conditions and issues that we might not have had if we were a normal planet, which gives us the opportunity for more compassion, and also the need for more faith as we deal with these problems. So it's kind of like what you were talking about, the slingshot effect, Paula, where we're so we get stretched so far, and we have to we have the opportunity to reach that much further. The highest hope for the planet, motivation to really go into service kinds of professions to help because people are in such distress. So we have lots of helping professions. A clearer sense. The greatest benefit, of course, was Michael's bestowal on the planet. We wouldn't have had that if we weren't in such distress. So how great a benefit was that?
Amazing.
Yeah, really. And what we can do, all of us, is to share, to let our light shine. I mean, that's the best we can do. We certainly have an incredible wealth of the spiritual knowledge that is not available to most people. So that becomes a responsibility for us to, to go and share. That was really it, I think, unless anybody else wants to add something. We became stronger. That was one of the points. We have to become stronger because we have more to deal with. So that's a good thing.
These are really good, you guys. Thank you, Bobby. All of those rewards.
Had a good group.
Yeah. Was Emily next, I think?
Yes. So, well, we also thought that Michael's bestowal was the biggest reward of being in a planet of isolation. Personal rewards, well, receiving the Urantia book. It's not every planet gets a manual. It can be life-changing to receive the knowledge from this revelation. We got the spirit of truth directly from a bestowal sun. Others usually get it from an avanal. Other planets get it from an avanal sun, but we got it directly from a bestowal. The highest hope for the world, of course, is light and life. We asked, how to get the book out into the world. Well, as Ken would, of course, knew that there are 1 million books out there, 800 of which are print, and 800,000, 200,000 are digital. So there a lot of people do have copies. About helping, let your light shine. It will help those you meet the most. Rick was saying that he's writing short stories based on parts of the book. I think his latest, he said, is on Van. And it helps to study others' faith. If we have to try to get a universal understanding of faith, to see that most faiths provide the idea of, or are proponents of the idea of the brotherhood of man and the fatherhood of God. So that was it for us.
Thank you, Emily. That's great. Kurt and David.
Yeah, I wanted to share the thing that I thought would make us better able to work with the planetary government and our supervisors and angels. And that is to make a connection with God in our lives. If we want to shine, we have to be connected to the source of power. And what's that? That's God inside of us, the living spirit. If we're not making an effort every day to have a regular spiritual practice and connection with God in prayer and gratitude and in worship, we're missing the boat. We're keeping our light under a bushel because it doesn't have the power that it can when we're connected to God. When we're connected to God and you do that every day, you're going to find that the angels are going to start working with you a lot more. You're going to be more willing to say, send me, Father. And I think that is the start of it. And so few of us do it, because I know that I didn't do it in the past. I studied this book intellectually, but it's only been when I've really went to God and shared my inner life on a regular basis that I've really seen some changes, and it's amazing. And I urge you all to do that too.
Thank you, Kurt. David.
I'm unmuted now. I'll start off, but I'll just feel free to join in. So one person was saying one benefit that he felt was that Jesus, because of isolation, Jesus came here and knows our life very intimately. Each of our lives knows what it's like, has greater empathy for us. Another benefit that was spoken of was by a few people was that we've had to go within to our thought adjusters and our spirit of truth and Holy Spirit in order to have that spiritual contact and growth, and rather than relying on an outer guide. So we have the inner source. Hopes, increased cosmic consciousness, men and women working together, greater racial harmony, and increased service motive economically around the world. So anyone else from my group have anything to add?
Thank you, David. That's great. So many rewards. Our group decided that we just want the world to learn to love each other. That's our fondest hope. And we also talked a little bit about isolation and what the COVID pandemic has done and some of the rewards of that personal isolation. So that came up, the rewards of personal isolation, and how we all saved a lot of money, and we went deep within, and, we learned how to do Zoom meetings, and lots of good things came from that. So, but we also were grateful for the Urantia book and perceived that it wouldn't be here otherwise. And so a lot of the same things. Karen.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something that we came up with in our group that we were talking about that wasn't touched on, and that was the diversity of the population on our planet, and how so differently we look at things, where we have atheists, agnostics, so many different world religions, and we've had really no direction at all to find God. So it's pretty amazing, that we have accomplish that, but it's also the fact that most of the people on our planet, if they choose to live eternally, even if it's once they have that one resurrection day, they will have a possibility to go on and to have eternal life. And the cool thing about that is, with all this diversity and everything that's coming from here, we're also helping to grow the Supreme with all this experiences. So I think that's pretty important.
That's a great one. Yay. Thank you. Christina? You're muted, huh?
In our group, we started talking about the quarantine and isolation of the last year and a half and how that relates to our planetary isolation historically. The last year and a half, I got creative and learned new things. Others took university courses online, which were there for the first time. And one person talked about that we had the opportunity to go inward and develop spiritually. Another person talked about that our character was shown through. And I thought that greed was on full display on the table with no apology for it, and that's sort of the transition that we're having from the business people being in charge to scientists and philosophers being in charge. And one person missed meeting monthly with the astronomy and technology groups, and then finished up by saying that peace begins with me, and that really resonated with people in our group.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, we had a special treat too. We learned that Robert Zavari has read the Urantia book for 29 years, and this is his first ever conference and the first time that he's ever met another Urantia book reader. So it was such a treat to meet Robert.
My goodness.
And welcome you to the group.
Welcome.
We all immediately went back in our minds to that first time. So Robert, it was so great that you're here. And
Paula, how did he find the fellowship? How did he find out about it?
And Robert, how did you find out about it? online?
Yeah. So with the talking about the quarantine, I've had a lot of downtime. I'm a driving instructor, so I was parked for the whole lockdown, and I had a lot of time to do some research finally. So I found Paula and her podcast. I didn't even know there was such a thing. I mean, and so I started doing some research online, the internet, and discovered for the first time that there's some websites out there. Never dawned on me to actually, I'm not much of a social media person. You know, I don't have a Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or anything like that. So I've been busy. And so for the first time, this lockdown, this quarantine has actually given me the time to go back to what I'm really passionate about, and that is the search for truth. And realizing how isolated I've been since 1992. I was only 23, I think, 24. I'm 52 years old now. I've raised 3 children, and I'm now talking to them about the Urantia book for the first time as well. They're in their early 20s. So it's, I don't know, it's really gratifying to find other people. It makes it real. It's not just something, I don't know, theoretical, I guess. Don't even know.
So welcome home, Robert.
Yeah, it feels like I'm home. Thank you.
Welcome home.
Yes, you did detect a Canadian accent.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Sue, you have a comment?
The only other thing I was going to add, and I love all the comments people have made, is that we have the opportunity because of isolation to experience what it means to be an Agandonter. You know, to really be able to develop faith without seeing, without proof. And I call that impressive faith. So
true.
I thought I'd throw that in the soup. I know we're over on time.
Well, we have time for Bob DeBold, don't we?
Thanks, Paul.
Of course.
Just real quick. I got to thank all of the presenters. Certainly, these questions that you put out here are very probing. And frankly, I struggled with Tim's first question, the other night. And, they definitely make you reflect a little bit. I would suggest that everyone, as you're reading, if you come across the verb or something like that, ask a question. April, started out with a whole bunch of questions just about prayer. Yeah, those are great questions and really gets you to think a little bit deeper about what they're really telling us in the Revelation. So thanks for the questions.
Thank you. Well, if no one else has anything, I'm going to let my pal Katie come back and we'll say goodbye and good night. Katie?
Well, it occurs to me, there I am. It occurs to me that probably the simplest thing that we could do starting tomorrow, right off the bat, is pick one of the areas that the 12 Master Seraphim have been working in. And this came up in the discussion along the way here, and it's very practical, very real. Just pick the thing that you already love to do, that you already believe fervently in, and figure out a new way or a better way or an enhanced way. Who else you might get involved, what you can do, minister as you are walking along, whatever that simple thing may be. There's certainly no end of need in this world. There is a great deal of need. And there's certainly no end to our ingenuity, and we have skills and we have passions. Just put them to work. It's the easiest thing to do. Just tonight, before you go to bed, say, all right, my thought adjuster, you've led me many, many times to many places. What can I do tomorrow? What practical thing can I do tomorrow when I get up after I'm done brushing my teeth? what should I do when I look in that mirror and say to myself, this is what I'm doing today, and get out there and do it. I'm pretty sure the thought adjuster will have an idea of and a good answer, knowing us and our skills and what we can do and successes. We want to build on successes. So I'm sure the first chore we get, the task at hand, will be one that we can do, so that it will build on itself, and that will give us that courage and go out and do something else. There has to be something every one of us can do that will fall into one of those 12 areas. And the next thing you know, you're working with somebody who works in another area, and all of a sudden you have a collaboration. So fun awaits, joy awaits.
Paula, Doreen Hain was trying to raise her hand for like the last 7 or 8 minutes.
Oh, Doreen, I'm sorry.
Well, that's all right. I was going to report for the group, but we're out of time, and it's okay. Monica and I were going to share. So most of the stuff was said exactly what we said as well. And, we talked about, let me say, when you talk about the slingshot, it's like the pendulum. As far as it swings to the left, that's as far as it's going to swing to the right. But the higher the pendulum, the better it is for everyone, That's the idea. So, but anyway, we talked about all the things that young people are searching for. Instead of authoritarian religion, they're searching spirituality. So that's a good positive thing. Our group talked about courage. It talked about ingenuity, and all the discoveries that have come about as a result of, giving people the freedom, but making it difficult, not easy. If you're missing something, the wonderful thing is somebody's going to figure out what it is, and they're going to invent it. So there's just so many good things that are going on. And of course, what else? Of course, we said, somebody said about Michael, and Jesus and all the beautiful things that he said and created, but it's acting out into society, not mentioning the name, because then people will run the other way. So it's you become, and I think that was said already, you become the thing that you see that really exactly comes through your heart and soul to other people, as Katie mentioned. And what else? Monica, do you have anything you want to contribute? There's a lot of things said. So
that's good. Excellent.
Anyway, maybe she went home.
Oh, there she is. Hi, Monica.
Yes, sir.
I just thought it was great. Thank you. Ditto.
Yeah, ditto.
Did it all.
Yay.
Thank you. It's wonderful.
Well, thank you, everyone. Anyone else?
A great idea. Katie had a great idea to ask in the mirror what you can do tomorrow. And one of the things you can do tomorrow is come for the final session at 10 o'clock Central Time. We're going to have a longer worship in the beginning and then the final presentation by Stuart. The way forward. What do we do with all this? What do we do next? So that's your official invitation if you needed another one.
That's your assignment should you decide to accept it.
Right. Same Zoom channel, right?
Well, thanks, everyone. It was great.
This recording will disintegrate in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Phelps.
Thank you, Paula and Katie.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Love you. Bye-bye.
Be with you all.
Thank you all. Tomorrow.
Thank you.
Love you.
Paula.
Bye.
Thank you all.